OpenAI just killed Sora. $1 billion Disney deal gone. And the filmmaking world, not exactly mourning.
I have zero sympathy here. I'm not sorry to see them go. And I don't, in all honesty, it's one less AI competitor in so many pleasant ways.
But that's just the start. GoPro just lost a patent battle they dressed up as a win. DJI just dropped a 360 drone at half the price of the competition. YouTube just overtook Disney as the world's biggest media company. And Adobe, the Department of Justice, has some words. Nobody is aware of the fact that a cancellation can cost you $385 if you try to leave in the first month of, subscribing to Creative Cloud Pro. Episode 109. Buckle up.
This is Focus Check, the weekly CineTech podcast.
Welcome to episode 109 of CineD Focus Check. I'm back with Johnny in the studio. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Nino?
All good. It's a busy week for new stuff, actually.
So let's start.
Let's start. So we'll get started today with the DJI Avata 360, which we also have here in the studio. It's their first 360-degree drone and, of course, a direct competitor to the Antigravity A1, which was released only a couple months ago. Then we'll talk about OpenAI actually shutting down the Sora app and Disney, of course, also exiting that $1 billion deal with OpenAI, which is very interesting. So it's the first kind of retreat in the generative video AI space. And we'll talk about what that means and why that actually happened. We'll also talk about GoPro actually losing almost $49 million compared to the prior year, but also, and that's almost more relevant to me because it kind of flew a little bit under the radar. They kind of lost a patent case against Insta360 and now are betting everything on their 2026 comeback, which we talked about before. But we'll dive into what that court case actually said and why they sued Insta360. We have an article on mentioning LA actually building more sound stages than ever before with a record low attendance, like kind of only 60-something% of them are used right now. We'll talk about our CineD Best of Show Awards at NAB 2026, where submissions are now open. We'll talk about the newly introduced Saramonic Air SE, which you have over there, which is a new, very compact little wireless mic for mobile phones, actually, but for an incredible price, actually. I did a small test. And we'll talk about DSC Labs coming back. Those are the famous makers of the EMA test chart that we also use for our lab test. Company went out of business sometime, I think, 1.5 years ago, and now somebody took over and revived it and is actually moving it to LA, which we're very thankful about. We'll talk about a new DZOFILM Arcana 1.5x anamorphic full-frame lenses. We'll mention Alister Chapman's breakdown video of actually explaining how you get the maximum image quality using Sony's Cine, which is their exposure index mode, which is in their cinema cameras, FX9, also the older cameras like FS7, FX6, of course, and also FX3. And we'll dive into that a little bit. We'll mention the FUJIFILM focus on glass voting results. You talked about that
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And now which lens actually won in their voting. We'll mention the Blackmagic Pyxis 6K autofocus, which is now introduced with a new test build for the camera. So a new firmware, which is still in beta, which actually makes the autofocus kind of good for a lot of lenses, which is very surprising for a lot of people. So we now suddenly have face detection, object tracking, and all kinds of things with a really what seems to be a usable autofocus in that specific camera. I think they originally had it on the Pocket 6K, and now it's also in the Pyxis 6K. We'll talk about a new iPhone case, and that's only because it's really interesting because it has an OLED screen built in at the back. And the whole idea is that as a creator or whatever, you can now use the best cameras of the phone as your selfie cameras.
Very nice.
Very fun idea. They sent us one to check out, and it actually is also a touch screen, so it's literally mirroring the entire content of your screen. But it also has a built-in SD card reader, which expands the memory of your phone. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll also, moving on, we'll also talk about our review of the Viltrox Nexus Focus F1, which is now finally out. I mean, the written review of that autofocus adapter that our friend Marcel actually tested quite extensively and was in a lot of contact with the manufacturer over the process. We'll talk about Audio-Technica entering the on-camera shotgun microphone space with their new offerings. We'll talk about the Sony FX6 firmware version 6, which is now out. First people are installing it. You know, like people are always a little bit nervous about Sony firmware updates because of some mixed results in the past, I would say. Nikon issued technical service advisory for the Z6 III, Z5 II, and ZR cameras. What is that all about? Is that a recall?
It's a recall that's gonna cost a lot of money.
Okay, we'll talk about
Nikon.
that. Also, the Anamorphic tool, which was launched that you wrote about. It's 2 OFX plugins for DaVinci Resolve, fixing optical issues and adding anamorphic lens characteristics in post. Very interesting tool. And then also some acquisition news. Apple acquiring Motion VFX, very popular software maker for especially Final Cut plugins that were just acquired by Apple, which, you know, it's an interesting move. Because, of course, we know that they have been building their Creator Suite, Creator Studio. So we'll talk about what that might mean. Also, YouTube now being the world's largest media company in terms of revenue, and soon also hosting the Oscars. And last but not least, we'll talk about the lawsuit that Adobe settled with the Department of Justice in the US over their subscription practices that everybody knows quite well, that you actually have to pay a penalty when you want to cancel your contract early. So we'll talk about what that means and if it actually, you know, is better in the future or not. But let's get started with the Avata 360. Now, everybody knows there was this new company, Antigravity, that introduced a drone I think it was launched only in December. So that was quite recently. Antigravity is a company that is incubated by Insta360. So it's basically like a sister, daughter company, whatever. And it's their first drone. And I have to say it's quite cool that they came up with something quite innovative. 360-degree drone is something we haven't seen before. I mean, there were FPV pilots that put 360-degree cameras on the drones before. And of course, with 360, you always have the problem that it's very easy to get stuff in the shot that you don't want there, right? So what Antigravity did, they put a camera on top and one at the bottom, and it's kind of like where it's stitched is where the drone actually is. And then if you don't fly too closely to something, you get a very unique 360-degree image, which means you can kind of fly around and do all the movement in post, which allows for some extremely, you know, like creative angles that you couldn't fly. You simply could not fly. Now, DJI does what DJI always does. They enter late in the market, undercut the price, and overwhelm with specs. They've done this every time they've entered any kind of market, whether it's the action cams, kind of quote unquote killing GoPro, which we will talk about in a little bit. We've seen this in many different spaces. And of course, I mean, drones are their main thing. Nobody has more experience making drones, so it's a logical step. They also introduced, of course, their 360-degree Osmo 360 only last year, I think, which is direct competitor to Insta360 as well.
So this came to the office a bit late and you were not really able
Yes.
to fly it like the way you wanted.
No.
I saw you just playing and bothering
It
me
literally
in
arrived.
the office, flying above my head and out of the window, back and...
It literally arrived yesterday.
Okay.
So we didn't test this. But, you know, like what I did is I did a short maiden flight. We can show some footage here, just trying it out. And I looked very closely at the specs and the pricing compared to Insta360 or Antigravity. So the interesting thing is the Antigravity A1, you cannot buy the drone alone. You can only buy it in a bundle with their goggles and grip controller, which makes it more expensive. The standard bundle is $1,600 for the Antigravity A1. This one you can buy alone if you have any of the already, because it's compatible with a lot of different controllers.
From the past.
Actually the RC2, and then also with the RC Motion 3, which is this hand controller, which is this intuitive gesture control. It's compatible with both, and it's also compatible with the goggles, the 3 goggles, version 3 goggles that have been on the market before that you can use with the Avata and some other drones. And now, it's not a coincidence, by the way, that this is also called Avata, because it's really also a successor to their normal Avata, which is their FPV drone. And I'll talk about why in a second. But most importantly, you can buy this alone. And when you buy this alone, it's 459 euros. There's no dollar price because we know DJI's troubles with basically, we don't even know if this will enter at the time of recording, at least. I mean, by the time you see this podcast, we know that the drone is out, like with the full specs. And we are not aware. It's probably not launching in the US.
We don't know. We will see tomorrow.
Probably not, yeah. But the euro price is 460 euros. And you cannot buy the Antigravity. That's drone alone. And if you buy the Antigravity, you have to buy it as a bundle, and it's 1,600. It's a lot more money. Now, the entry combo with the RC2 controller, that's basically one battery and this controller, is only $720. So it's literally almost half price of the standard bundle of the Antigravity A1. It's really incredible difference, actually. And then there is also the Fly More combo that DJI always offers, which is basically including 3 batteries and so on. And then we're looking at 940 euros versus, basically the top bundle you can get for the A1 is $2,000, and the top one you can get for the Avata 360 is less than 1,000. So we're literally talking about half price. And that's kind of
significant.
Significant, yeah. And of course, we haven't tested the A1. I've heard from some people who've worked with it that it is impressive in like what you can do, but of course it is small sensors in there. It's not, it's not very low light capable. And it is their first drone. Antigravity is their first drone. So, of course, we can expect that DJI knows better about a lot of things. And, for example, the difference is here with the Avata 360. This can do up to 6K 60 frames per second. The Antigravity A1, 5.2K 60 frames. In the maximum... the maximum resolution is 8K 60 frames when you do the 360. So it's 4K per camera, and it's 8K 30 frames on the Antigravity. So you can do some slow motion with this, which you cannot do with the Antigravity. There is a difference in sensor size as well, which is kind of significant. This is a 1/1.1 inch sensor, and each one of those 2 sensors in there, because it's 2 cameras, has 64 megapixels. The Antigravity A1 is 1/1.28 inch, and I don't know, actually the resolution is lower too, something like 30 megapixels. We have D-Log M in this. There is no kind of log, nothing I know of, at least in terms of log in the Antigravity. Maximum bitrate, we can also, it's very similar, 180 with the Avata 360, 170 megabits per second in the A1.
Which recording codec?
Well, it's always H.265.
H.265.
Yeah, both. I'm sure both of them, actually. The sensor advantage, I think, is meaningful because these slightly larger sensors and also this wider ISO range, because this can go up to 25,600 ISO. Of course, that's going to be very noisy. The Antigravity can only do 6,400. But combining the larger sensor with a higher ISO range basically means that this is going to be much better in low light. And, it's basically later day shooting. You're not flying a drone when it's dark, but you are flying it when the sun is setting. And you can get a lot of noise with drones with small sensors if you do that.
more specifications, or I can move forward and ask you, because you said Avata, and for me, Avata, it's a family of drones that will fly quite fast. And I mean, at the end, this can also fly a bit slower, and you can really take nice cinematic shots, not?
Yeah, this is not. I mean, it's
not
like
FPV, but
it is. Well, they are marketing this under the Avata brand because, of course, the original Avata was their kind of FPV, and you can fly it as an FPV, which is why this is also compatible with the goggles. I mean, that's one of the frustrations that some people have with DJI drones, is that you actually have to look closely what the goggles are compatible with, because a lot of drones you cannot fly with them. This one you can, so you can use this very intuitively. You can also use the motion controller to intuitively move it instead of using this controller and then use the goggles with it. So this works, and you can fly it as an FPV drone. So you can literally have an FPV mode with this and fly it as an FPV drone. So in that way, it is a successor to the Avata. I don't know off the top of my head what the top speed of the original Avata was, to be honest, or the successor, but this is 18 meters per second in sport mode, very similar to the Antigravity with 16 meters per second. I mean, these things, of course, are perfect to fly, to film sports, like to fly film snowboarders jumping or bikers or whatnot, and then, kind of do the movement in post. They're both quite kind of wind resistant, so that also speaks for them. Now, DJI has, I think, the best image transmission in the market. They're now at this 04 plus, 20 kilometers reach, which of course is always theoretically, because you're never going to do that. But it also means that the reliability of the transmission is better. So you basically have less interference. This OmniLink 360 that Insta360 or Antigravity has says it's only up to 10 kilometers. Again, you're not flying that far, but it can be expected it is probably not going to be that it's reliable. Good, yeah. But DJI has really, I mean, they're selling their image transmission separately because it's working so well. So there's no caveats there. Internal storage, actually, that's something that's become kind of a standard, which I love on those drones. DJI has 42 gigabytes. The Antigravity has 20 gigs. So there's a bit of a difference there too. So basically, you see in every kind of spec we're talking about, this is superior. Now, the one thing where Insta360, at least when DJI released the Osmo 360, a lot of people criticized their app, because actually changing the angle of a 360 video in post can be quite cumbersome. It's really, you need to keyframe stuff, you need to define start and end kind of position, you need to zoom in or zoom out of this 360 bubble. And a lot of people complained about how that worked on the DJI native software, as opposed to the Insta360 software, which they have, of course, a lot more experience in making software for 360 cameras. So this is something where we have to see if DJI has actually enhanced that a lot or not. But a lot of people love the Insta360 software for how it works and prefer that over what DJI is offering. But it's a software thing, and it's something that, of course, can be fixed. Kind of, yeah. That's something I would expect. Are
we going to review this anytime soon, or what's
I want to review it, at least do like a first look kind of thing without really knowing the Antigravity, because they haven't sent us one to try, so I can't really compare. But I want to look at this just as what it is. And one thing, of course, I mean, the Antigravity is often marketed as an entry level kind of thing. The price doesn't really speak entry level, and also it's not omnidirectional obstacle sensing. It only does, I think, front facing and downward facing, which is, of course, the two most important directions, because you're usually flying straight or down. This one has omnidirectional obstacle sensing, which, of course, we know historically DJI also didn't have that in their Mini. So the first Mini actually had no obstacle sensing, and that's what I said back in the time. It was like, it didn't make any sense to market this as an entry-level drone. Of course, it's 249 grams. However, if you have no obstacle sensing, you can literally just fly into anything without being warned. that's a problem, and then you can't say it's an entry-level drone when all your higher-end drones actually had this functionality. And then they introduced it with every generation. They added kind of more directions, and now it's omnidirectional. And this one is omnidirectional from the start.
I've seen a few clips from our friend Philip Bloom. He already played with the drone, and he flew it in between some trees, and it was actually very impressive to see how it's actually, I would say, safe to fly in places you wouldn't dare before.
Yeah, that's the LiDAR, because LiDAR literally sees those small things that a camera cannot see. And that's amazing about DJI being able to put this in. I mean, when we hear that Tesla isn't putting LiDAR in their cars because it's too expensive for their autopilot function, where all the competition like Waymo and so on has that, I wonder, how is DJI capable of doing that? I mean, it's only front-facing, but still, it's there, and the competition doesn't have it. So because that literally sees things that cannot be seen by a camera, because it's just, like it's detecting all those obstacles. It's literally taking that Avata 2 level protection that we had on the Avata 2 to the next level. And and on the A1, like I said, only binocular vision, which is forward and downward. So it's not only just forward and downward, it's only also relying on normal cameras, which will not give you the same kind of results. But it's not surprising. I mean, they simply don't have as much experience. But I'm convinced that Antigravity has to think about their pricing, because if like all we read is true, it's gonna be a very tough sell for them. Yeah,
I guess you start to think about pricing when you have the competitor, and this is a valid competitor. Before, if you're in the market offering something which is kind of unique, maybe you feel that you can take more money. But now with the reputation of DJI, let's see how Insta360 will respond.
The A1 from Antigravity is a first-gen product, and this is arguably not a first-gen product. It's a fourth-generation platform on the Avata, and it's also a little bit versatility versus purity, because the Avata 360 can also be an FPV acro drone or a 360-degree drone, but you can also use it as a normal drone, which is not true for the Antigravity. You can just simply set it up that it only uses one of the front-facing cameras. And then that means you can just use it like a normal drone, and you don't need to shoot 360 if you don't want to.
That's great, especially for people like me that has no interest in 360 video. That's.
You can do both. It's multi-purpose, and the A1 is single-purpose. It's only an immersive 360-degree experience, and arguably a purer one because of that. But it is still just doing that one thing. One thing that is worth noting is, of course, the A1 is a 249-gram drone. So that flies below a lot of regulations. So you will not have to get certification for all of those things. With this one, careful, don't put it on the camera. With this one, this is about 455 grams. So it needs C1 compliance. Registration, remote ID, that kind of things. For casual users, that actually matters, although it's not very hard to achieve usually. I mean, you can get your drone license quite easily, but it is an advantage if you are in the EU, in the CO regulatory framework. Of course, one thing that matters is pricing. I think is kind of like DJI's pricing is the kill shot here for me. The only thing that Antigravity has going for it is their 360-degree expertise when it comes to the post-production. Everything else...
And the weight.
And the weight, of course. Yeah. So, we are going to test this drone. We are going to fly with it. I'm going to be very curious to find out how this works. And let's see. Yeah.
For me, only one thing. I'm very curious because you said that the traditionally memory is actually built in. And we know that prices for memory is literally going up all the time. So I'm actually very curious to know how DJI is able to secure a certain price for a long period of time. If they're literally sourced a lot of memory beforehand, because of course they know their plans or how they do this. Because otherwise what we thought years ago, that having a memory in a camera is a good thing. Like, for example, how Sigma is doing with some of their cameras. We love the idea, but on the other hand, of course, that can have a direct impact on the final price of a product, especially in times like this.
Yeah, I mean I think it's we're talking about 42 gigs. It's not huge. I mean, this drone probably has 64 gig built in, and like whatever the difference between 42 and 64 is used for the operating system.
Yeah.
But that is probably still not a huge cost because we're talking about a very small amount. I think they actually have raised prices for their modules, the 1 terabyte module for the Inspire 3 and also the Ronin 4D because of the memory shortage. But this, they probably swallow the price increase. It's just going to be not a big difference. Actually, this is what you see here is the Fly More combo. So you see what it comes with. Always quite impressive in terms of what you get. And this bag also has a foldable landing pad, which I think is a first. I haven't seen that in any of the DJI sets before. So, and this is the different sets that they offer. So yeah, that's just some promotional footage from the camera that it's able to shoot, but we're gonna try it out ourselves, of course.
Okay,
good.
Shall we move on?
Let's move
There's
on.
a lot to talk about, and the time is short.
So news in the AI space. Very unexpectedly, OpenAI is closing the Sora app, which is interesting. I mean, it's something that was launched less than half a year ago, and if people remember, it's their kind of call it social media app for AI slop, for generated AI videos using Sora, and now they're closing it.
Well, the official explanation given is very logical because the company in general is seeking different ways to make more money, and part of those ways is actually to collaborate with other big companies and not necessarily end users. So obviously they're after money from big corporations and so on. On the other hand, they just lost how much? 1 billion?
A lot of money.
A lot of money, yeah, because they had this kind of ongoing cooperation with Disney, allowing them to.
Well, it wasn't ongoing. It was supposed to start.
Sorry, no, ongoing. I meant
yeah.
In the sense that it was already signed and everything was supposed to start, allowing people to do a lot of AI Mickey Mouses and so on
using Sora.
Exactly, but
and they're losing that.
Yeah,
I mean, the interesting thing is, of course, like running a platform like that costs an immense amount of money because it also didn't have ads, and we know that OpenAI has actually been secretly planning to launch ads in ChatGPT and so on, but probably also Sora, and then scrap those plans because of the success of the competitors. And then, of course, we had Anthropic, the makers of Claude, making fun of them in ads because that they're basically launching ads. And then Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, was really reacting in a very strange way, kind of like almost like, haha, they're funny, but those guys are really mean, like it was really childish reaction to this. And then they apparently pulled back the ads, but the main reason being that they saw that the enterprise revenue that Anthropic is making, even though they are much smaller than OpenAI, is comparatively higher than OpenAI, even though OpenAI is burning so much more money every month. And they are literally running out of ways to get money. I mean, they're already running to the Saudis and, like a Middle East, that's where you go when you don't know where to get money anymore. Now, of course, this is one cost factor to Sora app. Apparently, I mean, we've seen there were some usage statistics from third parties that kind of showed that it's completely flopped. I mean, it's not being used much anymore. Everybody in the beginning was asking.
There's a hype at the beginning and downloading in 24 hours, like millions times, and then
everybody was asking, what's the purpose of this app? Honestly, I mean, it's literally dropped to abysmal levels, and it still costs a lot to run because generating video and kind of incentivizing people to generate AI video for free is not sustainable, because we know with every one of those video generations they're actually losing money, and now they decided to scrap it and favor the more agentic workflows. We know the success of this OpenClaw and other things that now everybody's betting on. They want to go more into enterprise where they can earn more money. I think ChatGPT is kind of like the AI for the rest of us. Kind of like everybody, like my mom knows ChatGPT, but she probably hasn't heard of the others out there yet. And I think that's their problem. Most people, I think only 5% of their users are paying for ChatGPT, and that's not sustainable the way they do it. So they're now trying to find ways to make money, and this is one way, is basically cutting this app. Now the interesting part, they actually, well, first of all, you mentioned that the Disney deal actually collapses because there was some kind of, like secure revenue for them in this. They already secured this $1 billion deal where 200 characters from Disney, Marvel, Pixar, and Star Wars, all owned by Disney, were allowed to be generated on the Sora platform. Now they're losing that. That's interesting that they give this up. That basically, for me, that means that the math didn't end up. So they actually burned more money than $1 billion running this. And the interesting, but what does that mean? Does it mean that they are scrapping the entire video generating thing? Because they still have the Sora model, which is of course available through third-party platforms. You can still generate with Sora 2 using Higgsfield and all those other platforms, but the app is actually being canceled. They say that the Sora research team internally will pivot to world simulation research to advance robotics that will help people solve real-world physical tasks, because video models can serve as reasonable simulations on the physical world, blah, blah, blah. So basically, to me, sounds like they will actually not continue to develop the video generation technology behind it. I mean, we still have Google with their VO model. We, of course, have all the Chinese with CDance from ByteDance and Kling, and some others that are actually they have more superior models now. And that's the problem about all those AI things. People always just want to use the latest one because it's giving the best results. Yeah. You just simply don't touch the others anymore.
First of all, I have zero sympathy here. I'm not sorry to see them go. And I don't, in all honesty, it's one less AI competitor in so many pleasant ways. You know what I mean? So I'm happy to see them not doing this. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you look historically speaking, they already have the knowledge. It's not, even if the platform or the app will cease operation, the knowledge is still there. It's not going anywhere. And that means if they will identify within the next months, years, or whatever, they will identify again a business opportunity, they will gather the team again, and they will either continue from where they stopped, or at the back end, we don't really know what's going on. Because it might be that you still have to really develop some components for those robots and whatever. So it might be that the app is gone, and we always tend to look at things with a very narrow glasses as filmmakers or content creators, doesn't matter. But of course, the world is much, much wider, and it can be that this is gone, but something else might pop up in the future.
Well, I'm trying to see it with a wider scope. Of course, the filmmaking world is tiny compared to them. But I think it's just they are in a very difficult spot. They're burning the most money, and compared, if you look
let them collapse.
Exactly, and if you look at what Google is capable of doing with a lot more data that they have from like whatever like Google has access to basically everything on the internet, and a lot more data in the background. They can, of course, make better results. By the way, the irony here is, and we're already getting comments from people complaining about the AI-generated featured image, but I wanted to make a featured image with their competitor Gemini, Nano Banana, basically filmmakers celebrating over the Sora, like being lowered into the grave with Sam Altman standing by. And the irony here is it's not generated with any OpenAI tool. So
again, there are quite a few tools by now, and it can't be that everybody will survive. Maybe we know they're talking a lot. They're very open in many ways, but as you said, they're burning so much money, and the right for existence means to generate money back. And if you can't do this, somebody did a lousy job. But let's see.
The day after they signed the contract with the U.S. Department of War, Claude usage surged by 40%. So literally, people are abandoning OpenAI in favor of Claude, and I understand it.
Of
I mean, the
course.
ethical question here
course.
is really really strange.
Yeah. Usually, you kind of bend ethical questions depending on your needs, on your business needs. So yeah,
Exactly. All right,
good. Let's move on
let's move on to
another
another kind of quarrel between companies. I mean, in this case, GoPro. We looked at the quarterly results of GoPro, but more interestingly, actually, we knew that GoPro has been quite a bit on a losing streak. Massive competition from Insta360 and DJI in their traditional action cam market, with arguably their latest action cams being
innovation.
superior over GoPro. I mean, like the Ace 2 Pro from Insta360 and DJI Action 6, I think Osmo Action 6 are superior in many ways over the latest GoPro Hero 13. And we've seen this also in some of our reviews in the past. I think already with the Action 4 and 5, there was a time that where GoPro was still leading, but they lost their edge, and now the others are simply better. And it's another example for DJI entering a market and kind of undercutting with price and then overwhelming with specs, and they succeeded at that. But also the Insta360 cameras are very good. And now we reported about this a couple of weeks ago. They announced that they are working on a 5 nanometer processor called GP3, and that is supposed to give better low light results and better clean up the sensor footage better.
But not only that, I mean, the whole announcement was as if something really big and new coming from GoPro.
Which, of course, strategically was made just weeks or 1 or 2 weeks before their quarterly results, which they probably knew were going to be disappointing. And I mean, they said they will announce this in Q2. We will be on this story, of course, whatever the new products are. They even teased entering the cinema camera market. So that's very interesting.
I think we will know more around NAB, because if at all this is the time to announce things like this. So we are looking forward. But this is all connected, as you said, when you have to please investors.
And they are a public company.
Exactly. And you know your losses, and you know that you're not a market leader anymore.
No, this is connected to their quarterly results. So basically, their business is shrinking. They're selling less cameras. That's it. I mean, because they haven't really innovated much. The Hero 13 is now 1.5 years old, I think. And they've only introduced like a smaller version of it last year and an update to the Max camera, but nothing with new sensors or anything. So people are buying less of their cameras and probably moving on to the competition. But separate from that, Nick Woodman, the CEO and founder of GoPro, mentioned in the earnings call that there is now a ruling in the court case Insta360 versus GoPro. Honestly, we weren't even aware of that. We kind of missed that. But he said that there is a validation of GoPro's innovation-driven business model, noting that the ITC, the Trade Commission, issued exclusion and cease and desist orders against Insta360 and citing GoPro's portfolio over 1,500 patents. However, it sounds like they won. But if you look in reality, they kind of won on the look of the cameras, but lost on the technology inside them. So what actually happened is that there is a ban on a version of an Insta360 camera in the US now, which isn't even in the market anymore. It's an older version of the Ace series, their action camera. But they dismissed all 5 of GoPro's utility patent claims covering image stabilization technology, including the hypersmooth thing that GoPro was very proud of, horizon leveling, distortion correction, and aspect ratio conversion. So all of those things Insta360 is still allowed to do. They were either found to be either invalid or not infringed or both. And in practical terms, it means that GoPro won on the look of their cameras, but lost on the technology inside them. So that also means that the ITC confirms that Insta360's updated product designs, which that's the ones that are in the market now, fall outside of the scope of their design patent. And that also the exclusion really only applies to older and now discontinued Insta360 A series models that are not even sold in the US anymore. So it's kind of like GoPro says they won, but they will not have any benefit from that because it's not affecting anything that's in the market right now. So they will still have to compete on specs, which is great for filmmakers. They still will have to try to do better rather than sue the competition over features. And let's see. I mean, I don't know. I can't see them suing DJI. Maybe they will still do on something with their 360 camera or action cameras. But anyway, so the good news for filmmakers is that they will have to try to do better. And we'll see what's coming in Q2.
Yeah, I mean, it's better to innovate and move forward and spending the money on new products.
Yeah.
Rather than fight on old stuff in court, I guess, if you look at this.
That's kind of what I'm trying to mention in the article is like they'd rather have spent, because it's actually the lawyer and court cost is so high that it's now a line item in their results because it's just burned so much money. So they, probably would have spent that better on innovating. Okay, moving on. Just short mention on there's this association called Film LA that always tracks how much filming is actually happening in the LA Hollywood area, and we've seen already the decline over the last couple of years in terms of how much production is happening there. We know a lot of people there, and it's heartbreaking to see that in kind of the heart of entertainment there is so little production going on now. And a lot of it is connected, of course, to, either lacking incentives, which they've tried to do better now in California, like in terms of tax, like incentives to actually shoot in California, or simply just, of course, production companies avoiding union and then shooting abroad or in different states in the US. So now in LA currently, the occupation of sound stages is just over 60%. We were talking about fully booked stages over the COVID period when production was really booming, and this is really kind of low now. I mean, if you look at the occupancy, if you compare that to, let's say, 2020, we were at 94%, and now we are at 62%. And still, there's so much construction going on for new sound stages in LA that it's kind of completely counterintuitive. Because right now, it looks like nobody's actually there to fill them.
So what's the reason? I mean, did you manage to, in your article, to find kind of a logical reason for that?
I think a lot of it has to do, of course, that a lot of those permissions associated with that and the planning has already started years ago. And it's probably, too late to stop. But of course, I mean, we already have some people commenting who are working in the industry there that it's of a lot of it is a tax write-off or some kind of way to, avoid taxes and then get an easy way out to actually convert those sound stages into
something
condos, which if you were to plan, to start with that, it's going to be, it's a lot more expensive. So it's, they're probably gambling on the fact that they're not going to succeed and then have the city or the government in general come in and allow them to convert it into something else in a cheaper way. You never know. But in any case, it's very strange because we have now so many sound stages in LA which are under occupied and still so much in construction that let's see what happens here.
Let's try to follow because that's an interesting story.
Yeah,
in general.
Film LA does a good job. I have to really give a shout out to them. Always get their press releases, and they also track what the other jurisdictions are doing, and you can compare, in terms of square footage in millions, how Los Angeles County compares to the whole of the UK, which is very similar now. Like the UK has a lot of sound stages now, a lot of production going on in the UK, and we saw at BSC, we heard that it's picking up. There's more shooting, and you see so many productions on the big streaming services that are made in the UK now. Also Ontario, Canada, 3.7 million square feet compared to 8.3 million in Los Angeles County is not to be dismissed. Also British Columbia, 2.3 million. So Canada is very strong. New York, 3.4 million. Georgia, 3.5 million. So there is a lot of competition, and of course, productions tend to move wherever they get, where they have the crews, we know also Eastern Europe. I mean, Hungary is doing great. Czech Republic is doing great. Romania is doing great in these things. It's just there's so much global competition now with great crews available all around, where of course it's a bit difficult for productions to justify to still shoot in LA, unfortunately. And because of a lot of it, of course, to do with the actual cost of permissions and crew. All right, let's move on to our Best of Show awards. So, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I mean, every year for the last, 4 or 5 years, I think, we are running our Best of Show awards for NAB. And I have to say, it's such a nice opportunity to, besides engaging to the being engaged with the manufacturers, is actually to reward them for something that they have been working on quite hard. And I think Nino is right now showing on the screen a photo that we took with Saramonic after they won one of our awards. It's a pure joy for the manufacturer also. And I'm saying this regardless to if it's us or anybody else who gives them an award. I think it's really, really nice to see how they react. And for them, it's a little we made it, yeah. So this is an open call to the manufacturers. If you have something to show during NAB, of course, we can sign an NDA before. If you want to share some secret information. But all in all, I think we have a pretty clear picture of what is going to be announced already from different manufacturers. I think it's going to be an exciting NAB altogether, and we are expecting also to deliver at least 40 plus videos during the show. We're going to be, of course, a full team over there. And when it comes to the manufacturers themselves, they will get a nice nominee sign, so they also can share with anybody around to let them to know that they actually they applied for our award, and then hopefully they will also have the chance to win. I mean, we have 10 categories this year.
Yeah.
Different from cameras to, I mean, we can go through, but I think if you are a manufacturer and you want to submit, I think that we will find a category because it's quite diverse here.
And we should point out that we are asking for submissions. We stopped
absolutely.
A while ago to actually kind of, try to look at everything because it's impossible. It's simply impossible at the trade show to really get a complete overview of what's there. So we are reaching out to the manufacturers to really submit products that they think are worth considering for the award. And then it's a more structured approach.
Absolutely, and in all honesty, you're right. And also to justify why we're taking money for that, it takes a lot of time for us also and efforts. And I hope that you guys understand this. And when you run a business, you have to be compensated on that.
There is a small submission fee, and it's not something that that would prevent anybody from submitting. To be honest, it's just otherwise we'll get hundreds of submissions of completely irrelevant stuff.
Not only this, we'll be occupied the whole show just looking at the hundreds of stuff and things, and then what?
Of course, we still reserve the right to add things that have not been submitted in some cases, but that's not the goal. Because sometimes something is so obvious that we wanna consider it, even though it's not being submitted. But 9 out of 10 times, we are asking for submissions, and in order to be able to consider it. And ideally, for the manufacturers, submit before the show, because it just gives us more time to
evaluate stuff.
Evaluate stuff. Yeah. Good. Talking about Saramonic.
We have this little thing here. I mean,
they just introduced something very small and interesting. Actually, it's another wireless microphone system, and I say another wireless microphone system because, of course, this is a crowded market now. But I think they found an approach that is kind of unique, in a sense that, first of all, this is not targeted at filmmakers.
Exactly.
It's not really made for cameras. This is really made for mobile filmmaking. And again, we've seen a lot of other solutions in this field, from everybody starting with Rode over DJI,
small rig.
Everybody's making those things now. But what's interesting about this one, first of all, the price. I mean, this is $49. It's incredible. And it is kind of a neat little charging case. The transmitters are really small. So they still have the logo on it, which is always something.
It's mute, I have to say.
It's kind of muted. Yeah, you don't really, it's not an in-your-face kind of thing like with the Rode things.
Let me put one. I want to...
Yeah. So it's kind of hidden in there. It has a little magnet, so you can put this very easily, and it's small enough to actually not sag on your clothes, right? I mean, it sags a little bit on yours. No, actually not. So it because that's the problem with a lot of those things is that they're too heavy and then it hangs down, and which means like you want to attach a lav mic. You cannot attach a lav mic on this. It's really just the transmitter.
It's 5 grams. It's nothing.
5 grams. And the receiver is actually in this thing as well. So there is a USB-C and a Lightning version.
Quickly just show.
And you can attach it to the phone like this. It comes with its own app. So in the app, you actually just calibrate it. You're not recording in the app. Now, what's really cool about this, first of all, I think this can recharge those transmitters up to 28 hours of recharging time or something like that.
It has a crazy amount of time.
It's very long. So you charge this charging case with the 2 transmitters and the receiver once, and then in total you get like 28 hours. I think each one of the transmitters is something like 4 hours of transmission time, or 4 or 6 hours I think 6 hours without the noise cancellation. And talking about the noise cancellation, I made a little, it's not a full review, but I made a little reel on those things, and there's 2 levels of noise reduction built in.
3,
no? 2, it's off, and then there's strong and mid.
Okay.
And the cool thing is that what Saramonic says, they're not just applying a basic pattern for the noise reduction, which most of those built-in things for other manufacturers do. It's actually recognizing the background sound and adjusting the level of noise reduction. So what I did in this little reel that I shot, we have a lot of construction going on in front of our office on the street, and actually also in the courtyard right now. I hope you don't hear it. But in the street yesterday, I went and I can hold it and
just to show that's with the app.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can just enable the noise reduction by pressing the button here once on this one, and then you have the strong noise reduction enabled. I have to say it's a bit too strong for me. I think it's affecting the voice a little bit, but once you press again, there's like a softer way, like a mid-7. You still hear a little bit of the background noise, but the voice sounds actually like the real voice, and then it's fine, but I was literally standing next to an excavator which was doing crazy amount of noise, and you could understand me. I mean, it's probably not professional grade sound, of course, as if you use like professional lav mics, but it's absolutely 100% good enough for 90% of kind of influencer stuff, and it's so easy to travel with this thing. And the $49 kind of make it almost like a no-brainer in terms of like the cost. And they also advertise you can use this as a hand mic if you have it built in.
That's actually quite nice too.
If you're connecting it like this, why not?
It comes with a little dead cat or 2 of those actually, like a windshields that you can put on the transmitter. But of course, if you're working as a little handheld microphone, you can also put, of course, the windshield, and it's very important. Yeah,
it's not 32-bit, it's 24-bit, of course, and
it's not recording
internally and so on. But I think there's a limit to what you can expect for that kind of money, and it's just one of those things that can live in your bag if you sometimes shoot with a phone.
Absolutely, and there are 2 versions of those. I mean, if we are using the USB-C version, you can also buy another kit, which is a bit more expensive. It's $69, and that comes with the USB-C and a Lightning
for the old
receiver.
iPhones.
Exactly.
But
But well done.
It's an interesting thing, and quite simple, easy to use, works well. Nothing to complain about. But again, if you're looking for a professional thing where you can actually which you can use with a camera and attach a lav mic, this is not the thing to look at. I mean, they have what is it called? K70?
K9. No,
K9?
the K9 is a completely professional.
It's a
stuff.
really high-end thing
That's a
from
different.
Saramonic, for example, which is great. But completely, of course, different price level as well.
Yeah, and different audience altogether,
Yes.
users. Yeah.
Cool. Let's move on to DSC Labs. Now, this might be a company that a lot of people have never heard of, to be honest. We reported about this 1.5 years ago. DSC Labs, I think originally from Canada. They closed down. There was a couple that founded it, and they weren't bankrupt or anything or insolvent. They just retired. So this is a company that actually makes charts. If you look at their catalog, they have all kinds of different charts for camera tests. It's all kinds of different things for lens charts and so on. But the most important for us is the Xyla high dynamic range chart, because that's what we use for our lab tests. And that's the EMA test results that we're getting for the Latitude. Now, when we heard that company went out of business, it's a problem because there's actually nobody else making those as far as we are aware. And now it's great to hear that they are back and actually
they're operating from Los Angeles right now.
Exactly. They're moving. The person who took over is Matt Conrad, who is an experienced DIT, and he literally moved the business from Toronto to Los Angeles, which of course makes a lot of sense also, because even though despite the drop in production, it's still the center of the entertainment industry, and of course with a lot of people and rental houses there, makes total sense for him to be there with this company. So we're very happy. We also, talking to them in the background a little bit, because of course we need to think about the future of the lab tests, of where we're moving it, and just to be sure that we have those charts available is extremely important. And yeah, it literally fills a gap that many in the industry feared would remain permanent. And it's just great to hear that they're back and back in business. So very nice. Moving on, DZOFILM announced a new series of anamorphic lenses called Arcana 1.5x. So Johnny, tell me, what's different compared to the Remus 1.5x?
No, it's not actually the Remus. It's more for the Viper from Blazer, because we reported about those a week or 2 weeks ago, something like this, and suddenly, there is something from DZOFILM. This is really a direct competitor. Mm-hmm. Sadly, I see already some people that are, or in some comments, that they are canceling, pre-ordering the Blazer and moving to DZOFILM. I don't know why they are actually making this assumption that those will be any better in any way.
Is there any footage already released from those?
There is a bit of footage, but the idea is that, let's say like this, the lenses are kind of similar, and the idea is that those are full-frame PL 1.5 anamorphic lenses with T2.1. Also the Blazer, this is very common here. And
beautiful design, by the way.
The design is very nice. I personally like this design a bit better than the Blazer, but that's a matter of personal taste. But when it comes to pricing, actually the Blazer currently, I don't know how, it's funny because it's a new release of the Blazer and it's already $200 discounted at B&H. So what used to be originally $1,099 is already $899. Yeah, and this is before the lens is in the market. But that makes, of course, the Blazer Viper cheaper.
But they're very similar. I mean, we're the Arcana also 1,100.
Yeah, but no, that's $200 difference.
But I'm not talking about huge
but
difference.
But still, 200 is 200. I'm just saying.
But if you buy the set, they're 2,900.
That's right. But anyway, the Arcana, I think it's another attempt from DZOFILM to enter the anamorphic. We haven't heard from them for quite some time. Those lenses are 700 grams each. As you said, the design is very, very nice. And I'm actually
very small also, right? I mean,
it's relatively small. Yeah. I mean, this is the kind of the general trend is to make smaller lenses. I actually I'm very curious to see how Siri will respond to those, because currently what they have is the iron glass, and this is a bit of a faster lens, the T1.9, but it seems like a bit of a larger lens. But it's always between, basically in this price range. It's Siri, DZOFILM, Blazer, and Viltrox. Those are the companies, and I'm sorry if I forgot anybody, but it always seems like that those are competing on the same target user.
These are PL only?
PL only.
Yeah,
PL only, but there's a nice thing here that you can literally release the PL mount and rotate it. So if you're using the camera to shoot vertically, you can still use it. And I think this is a nice touch. Very
cool. Yeah, I think. They're all going for. I like the 1.5.
That's the
squeeze
best,
because it's the perfect balance, right?
That's right. 1.5 or 1.6.
And what you can use on a 16:9, 17:9 sensor. Yeah.
Actually, OpenGate sensor. I think for OpenGate sensor, this is the best you can get. The 1.5 and the 1.6. If the 133 is always good for 16:9. So it's really I think that's when you see the value for money and what it can do, and also those lenses have a common filter in the front, 77 millimeters and so on, plus the weight of it. I think it's a very nice offering.
Nice. So let's see how they fare. The still here looks beautiful. I think I read somewhere they're going for a 2x anamorphic look.
Sounds familiar too, no?
Yeah. But it looks cool. It looks really good.
Yeah. Just last word, of course, if you have, if you don't want to use, if you have a Sony camera, Canon camera, Sony camera, L mount, or Fujifilm X mount, there is an adapter, or even from DZOFILM themselves, there is the Octopus adapter, and then you can, of course, very easily convert your PL or this PL lens into any mount that you need that your camera has.
Nice. All right, moving on to a little video that our friend Alister Chapman made for Sony, actually breaking down Sony's CineEI to kind of help maximize the image quality and dynamic range.
You are a Sony user, and the CineEI from whatever reason was always very confusing for people.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to look at the video? Is it making things a bit easier?
Yeah, so basically the idea is always with the CineEI, when you set the Sony cinema cameras that are capable of doing this, you can either go into a custom mode where you can just freely set the ISO as you're used to from any camera, and also the Alpha series. And once you switch to CineEI, you basically are limited to the native ISOs, but you can just still change that exposure index. So, but it basically, to put it simple, it will give you kind of a guidance of what to use, what you should use in the camera in terms of settings in order to get the maximum
dynamic
latitude,
range.
And dynamic range. And it is just sometimes a little bit confusing with those settings, and Alister does a really great job of why do we need it and how do you use it and how do you expose CineEI correctly. And it is basically explaining what is the difference between ISO and exposure index, and clearing up some misconceptions here. And it's always about shifting this midpoint, exposure midpoint. And he's also mentioning, some special things that you have to note with the dual ISOs of the FX3 and FX6 and so on. So but it's basically a good guide to explain how to properly expose when you use this mode, because it's not always well explained. And there are some differences between Sony cameras as well, which you have to note. Yeah. Good. Moving on, we talked about this Fujifilm Focus on Glass initiative a while ago, and now the voting results are out.
That's right. It was quite interesting to see that where the people preferences are, and I think it's very much justified, because the number one request from Fujifilm is actually to make an XF 16 to 80 millimeter f2.8 lens. And what we take from this, that people simply want an all-arounder, fast, good lens but they can do everything from wide-angle shots, which is of course a necessity when you have a APS-C sensor, and kind of a very nice portrait lens also. So this is not surprising for me that more than 11,000 people actually voted for this lens. And if you look at number 2, not so far from it is the 18 to 50 f1.4. So it's a bit narrower, and maybe the tele part of the lens is not like the 80, but this is a faster lens. So actually it's making it also very much usable in lower light conditions. Surprisingly, for me, the number 3 is the XF 18 and 30 millimeter. This type of design is actually based on an older design that FUJIFILM had, that within one camera you can literally change the focal length between lenses, and it's a nice, interesting idea. But I think if you ask me, most probably FUJIFILM will concentrate on number 1 and number 2, and now they know even better what people are looking for. We talked about it briefly 2 weeks ago, because there was also an option to see Cine lenses, proper Cine lenses from FUJIFILM, and this is really, really at the end. I mean, let me see where is the Cine lenses here? Manual focus, Cine lenses, number 11, out of 14. To tell you that I'm disappointed, not really, because I don't know what will be the immediate benefit of having another set of prime lenses, even if it's from a respected company like FUJIFILM / Fujinon. Those will really, you really have to, when you enter this market, you have to bring to the market something different, extraordinary, and not to compete only on the price if you want to shine. So yeah, I understand number 11, fine. Probably we will not see any of those lenses anytime soon. Yeah. But that's it. Let's see what we will continue to follow this, and hopefully in 2-3 years we might see a lens like this. Or if you guys are a bit patient with us at NAB, we're going to meet the FUJIFILM people again and ask them. And maybe we will even conduct an interview and check the proximity that this type of lens will really actually going to be manufactured.
I wish every camera or lens manufacturer would make those polls, because it makes so much sense to also have this public. I think, I mean, of course they do their user research and so on, but I think it would be quite beneficial to have this from everyone. Yeah,
this is true. I think it shows understanding of the current market, plus the power of the community. Simple as that.
Yeah, good summary. All right, let's take a quick look at Blackmagic. They introduced a new test build for the firmware of the Pyxis 6K, which enables autofocus. So autofocus was always a little bit of an afterthought for Blackmagic design, and until last year, when at NAB we had an interview with Craig Heffernan again, and they introduced for the first time, said that face detection autofocus will be coming to the cinema camera 6K, which was the first one. And they said we're starting with this camera because of the sensor, and it's capable with this sensor, and they will gradually bring it out for more cameras. And now they have a test build where it is also being enabled for the Pyxis 6K. It's now enabled on both the L mount and EF mount version of the camera. It's supporting single AF, like AFS, and also continuous autofocus, face detection, and object tracking. And you can even resize the focus box and in continuous and object tracking modes. We had a quick look, and there's also a very good video on this by a creator called, what's his name? Of Two Lands. Forgot his personal name, but he did a very good job demonstrating of how it works in different modes with the Siri Astra lenses. And you also, he tested Sigma lenses and so on. And there are some differences in how they perform. I mean, it's probably a little bit too early to really give a final verdict, because of course we're talking about beta firmware. But in basically face detection proved quite reliable in good lighting conditions. The system sometimes lost the subject for a brief moment when turning around and stuff like that. So it's not kind of maybe trained to kind of wait for a little bit until the face comes back and so on. But it reacquired the focus quite quickly. Transition speed control makes actually a big difference. So there are settings like this already available. You can change how quickly the focus shifts and so on. So they did a lot of homework in terms of that. You can change the focus box, like how big whatever the object is you're tracking, and it's doing a pretty good job tracking. Now the EF mount is also supported, but Blackmagic Design notes that the testing has been limited. Christian Lamb, that's the creator of that video, actually recommended that EF users. No, actually, that's somebody. I saw a Reddit thread where they are talking about this. Recommended that EF users experiment with different transition speed settings because the EF lenses seem to be a little bit more sensitive than the native L-mount lenses. Early community reports, from what we've heard, is there's a bit of a mixed picture for EF lenses, and a lot of the Canon lenses also work well with the Sigma MC21 adapter, but there is some audible motor noise, and also the native EF version of the Canon 24-105 worked quite well on the EF mount Pyxis version and so on. So less consistent results with Sigma Art primes, interestingly. So it seems to be like native EF lenses from Canon worked better.
Yeah, but it always
so
takes
far.
Two for tango, yeah. I mean, just enabling good autofocus on the camera doesn't mean that it will perform 100%. Sometimes you really need a firmware update of the lens itself. So I really hope that Blackmagic Design is talking to companies like Sigma and such in order to help them and bring the lens on par with the autofocus system here.
So of course people are asking, what about the Pyxis 12K, which is their newer camera? As we reported in the NEB 25 interview already, the 12K model uses a fundamentally different RGBW sensor technology compared to the Bayer sensor in the 6K. So it means that it will take a lot more engineering work on their part to implement autofocus there. So it will come, they said, but there's no official confirmation when, or like if they're already working on this. So
I think it's a valid question to ask during NAB.
Yeah, maybe they made some progress here. But I in general, it's just really cool that, Blackmagic is always good at kind of updating existing products that have been in the market for quite a while, actually, and adding some more functionality. It's just nice to see those things getting some love. I mean, we also have, of course, the... it's just cool. It's just cool that you have a camera that, like even the cinema camera 6K that's been out for a couple of years, and suddenly the autofocus is good. It's not something that anybody expected. So check out that video from the channel Off to Lance, because he does a good job showing at what works and what doesn't work. It's embedded in the article, and link, of course, in the show notes. All right, moving on to something a little bit funny. There's a company called Selfix that got in touch, Dockcase actually, with a product called Selfix that got in touch with us about a new thing, which is a selfie case. So it's literally an iPhone case for the 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max that puts an AMOLED, so it's really an OLED screen at the back of your phone. It's a round screen with around 480 pixels, like 480 by 480. It also does actually, let me just show you, you can enable this assistive touch, and then it's a touch screen. So I can literally touch here and focus on you. It only shows literally the same thing you see on the main screen. So it's so even if I'm out of the camera app, like I will see my home screen here, which is funny. So I can even launch the CineD app or other stuff here.
No, the teleprompter or some other stuff. It's
all kinds of stuff. Yeah, but it's really, of course, the whole idea is to use the camera app, because then you can use those main cameras as selfie cameras. So if you are a creator and working with your phone and filming yourself, of course this makes sense, because now you can use the main camera, the 24mm, which is the best camera the phone has, to film yourself and still be able to at least frame yourself. So interesting concept, something that, like I haven't seen from anybody else before.
I've seen other independent small screens that you can attach to the iPhone. This I saw before.
Yeah.
But the way it is here, I think it actually looks quite nice. But is that only for the 17 Pro Max, or
the Max and the normal 17 Pro?
But
there's
from
two
the
versions.
17,
there's no. I'm not sure. I don't think they have plans for older phones. So right now it's just for those two phones. I think it also probably takes quite a bit of processing power. So they probably want to rely on the A19 chip that's inside.
Okay.
Now, one other thing that actually this brings is an SD card slot.
Nice.
So you get memory expansion with this. You can use micro SD cards inside. I mean, you see it here. Inside the case, you can put a micro SD with up to 2 terabytes. The only downside here is that it's quite slow.
It's a limited speed.
You cannot use this to record ProRes, unfortunately, because that would make a lot of sense, of course, to use this. It's only supporting cards up to 2 terabyte UHS-I class 10 U3 V30. So it is good for drag and drop with a Files app. If you run out of space, you just dump stuff because it's already built in, kind of. So that's nice, but you cannot use this to record ProRes footage, for example, externally. This would need higher speeds, because you would need something that does 220 megabytes per second.
So this is a Kickstarter thing, which is still running. Let me just quickly check.
It's a Kickstarter that just started on March 17th.
22 days to go by the time you see this podcast.
Yeah, it's already successfully funded. I mean, they set themselves a very low goal. I think the pricing is interesting. It's very low. I mean, it starts at $79. The standard price is going to be $129, and that's the super early bird price. I guess we are now at the early bird, which is $89. It's still, I mean, for what you get, it's I don't think it's.
I think the lowest that I can see here is $109.
Okay, maybe now they're already in the. Yeah, so there's also, there's now a magnetic ring holder you can get to kind of hold this, to put over this thing, and so on. And there's also versions with a 512 gigabyte micro SD card and so on. So, but it is, like always, of course, we have to give a disclaimer. It's a Kickstarter campaign. Those can fail and not ship. But honestly, I mean, if a manufacturer ships us something which seems like a completely finished product and it's working fully, I have little doubt that this will not work, because I see it already working in my hands, which is rare for a Kickstarter thing.
I think it's really cool in a way. I mean, if you already find yourself using the phone so much, and if you are a content creator, and we know how it is, you always struggle to use the proper cameras because you simply don't see. That's an easy way to do so.
It does add a little bit of weight. I can't actually tell you exactly how much, but it feels probably like, I don't know. It is making the setup a little bit heavier, of course. It's not like a normal just rubber case that has literally no weight. It just adds a little bit of heft, but it's not significant. I mean, it's not anywhere near those professional cases like the Kronos case from Tilta, which literally is metal to add some stuff, but it is adding some weight.
2 quick questions for you. One, how does it feel to run with a pink case? And the second question is, because we all tend to drop our iPhones at some point. What we know about this is that protected in any way?
It feels rugged. I'm not worried about dropping the phone with this.
Actually, now I can see there's like a step. I mean, if you look.
Yeah. There's a battery inside here, probably, or some tech that actually powers the screen.
So that's prevented to land on the.
Yeah, and also don't forget that literally what you get here, there's of course a USB-C port inside the case, which plugs into the phone's USB-C port, and then they add another USB-C, which is, I think, why they need to add this, because the USB-C, the new one, is at the back here.
Okay,
but the cool thing is they still give you that USB-C, so you're still able to charge the phone, or probably even use external accessories like microphones or SSDs, which I haven't tried, but through the phone. And I don't mind the pink. Like I'm man enough to run with a pink case, so why not? But yeah, I think it's a very cool concept, and I think it will find its target audience. But of course, again, not a professional tool, I would say, not something. But as somebody who, if you are a content creator who is filming yourself with a phone, and you actually want to use the better cameras, this is probably the easiest way to go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to Viltrox. Yeah, so our review of the Nexus Focus F1 autofocus adapter is finally out. I say finally because I think we've teased this for weeks. And the problem here was that basically, very often we chase companies to send us early units of something to test. And in this context, Viltrox was actually kind enough to send us a very early unit. But the problem was it was so early that the software wasn't ready.
Some will say too early.
Yeah. So Marcel Klein, the first AC that tested this for us and with us, actually was struggling quite a bit at the beginning, to be honest, because there was no manual. It wasn't easy to set up. The calibration was a bit finicky at the beginning, but the lead developer of Viltrox was very nice and constantly in contact with him and helped him. And then they sent another version. And then, like we could tell, the version we got is the one that's now shipping, and that just simply worked. I mean, suddenly all the problems were gone. There is now also, just after the review was released, they pushed an update to the app, which now already holds a lot of lens data. So you don't have to run through all the calibration all the time. Nice. You can just simply set the lens that you have, and they're adding more and more lenses over time. Now there is it's working quite well, like when you have it set up properly, and the standard set comes with 2 motors. Now there's one problem that Marcel found with the 2 motors is simply that they are a bit, the way they are built, you can't literally put them next to each other because of how they're built. I mean, I'm showing it on screen here. So the way you have to mount them is kind of like this. You have to one from the top and one from the bottom if you want to attach focus and aperture at the same time, which of course isn't great because it limits somehow how you can rig the thing. I would recommend Viltrox to kind of work on that motor and kind of, like make it a little bit slimmer so you can put them next to each other.
Yeah, just for those who kind of lost us a little bit, this Nexus Focus F1 is actually making PL lenses to become autofocus lenses.
Should have mentioned that.
Yeah, so because when you talk about aperture, it can be that it's less important for people, and all they want is really the autofocus function, and then you're going to work only with one motor.
You don't have to use both.
And then everything is in place.
Right. Yeah, it literally, like you said, it literally makes manual lenses autofocusable. And the cool thing is it's not relying on LiDAR or anything like that. It really uses the camera's own autofocus settings. So it taps into you when you change like how fast the transition speed should be. And it's Sony only right now. It's E-mount only. So you have all those autofocus settings and, for example, sensitivity, transition speed, that all of that will be applied to the actual adapter and the lens that you're using, and then translated from the adapter to the motor.
The main competitor is the Tilta Nucleus autofocus adapter, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And that is also just has entered the market now. There is a price difference here. I mean, I think it's also a different target audience because the Viltrox Nexus Focus F1 is kind of, when you buy that, it's ready to go. You have everything you need. You have an adapter. You have the 2 motors. You don't need anything on top. However, it costs, let me check the pricing here. It costs $600 and with a single motor. And if you want both motors, it's $900. But the Tilta Nucleus autofocus adapter that we reported about, which we haven't tested yet, starts at $269. However, you cannot use it by itself. You will, because that's without the motor, and this is really made to work with the Nucleus system. So you will either have to have the Tilta Nucleus Nano 2 or the Nucleus M2 in order to use the Tilta Nucleus autofocus adapter. So it's a little bit Tilta one is really more targeted, I think, with the nucleus, with the nano, it's of course entry-level productions, but with the M2, it's really more at, like really first ACs, because then you can enable and disable the functionality of the adapter from the hand unit of the nucleus M2, which is great, of course, because if you're a first AC, sometimes you might want to rely on that autofocus capability, and sometimes you just want to override it and switch it off. And you can do this from the hand unit, and then without actually changing anything about the setup. The Viltrox system is more targeted at creators, I would say, because it's not really you cannot interfere with it. You cannot. If I wanna manually focus, I need to change the system literally. I cannot use this system to manually focus. It's autofocus only. So that's the difference. And also, it's not going to stop at the 269 for the Tilta. You will need to add the Nano 2 or the M2.
Yeah, and then if you add the Nano 2, the complete set at B&H is $450.
Exactly. So you're in a very similar price point, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's I guess how they priced it. So and there's also a third competitor in the market, which was recently announced from a small company called PD Movie. It's called the Smart Fusion Adapter, and that's something that actually combines this capability with some LiDAR functionality.
They were one of the first in the industry actually to do such thing.
Yeah.
The earlier model, for me, it was a bit of a hit and miss. I didn't really enjoy using it. You always had to also make sure that your subject is in the middle. But it looks like the version 4, the new one from PD Movie, is much better. Yeah. This is something that we definitely need to look at.
But in general, the Viltrox, they've come a long way from the beginning. I think they really... Probably Tilta and Viltrox knew of each other working on those things. So both companies were really racing to the market with this. And now we have two solutions that probably both work quite well. Of course, what we didn't do is do extensive tests with tons of different lenses. But I can just assume now that it's, soon reaching the first backers, because this originally was a Kickstarter campaign. They will add lots more lenses to their database, which will make the usage much easier, because if you don't need to calibrate each lens manually, which was a bit of a painful process in the beginning, to be honest, then it's going to be much easier to use. And when it works really well. Nice. Really, it was, it's quite impressive. And it's one of those things where you see it and it's like, I think we gave it one of our CineD Best of Show awards at IBC last year. Yeah. It's simply one of those things where you wonder, why didn't this exist before? Why has nobody done this before? It's quite amazing, actually. And actually probably negates the need for autofocusable Cine lenses like, Sigma is doing now, because the Sigma zooms
not necessarily, Nino. Everything here, it's additional. It's more weight, it's more battery, it's more motors. Yeah. It's more and more. It's good. It's a nice option to have. If you have a lens that you really, really like, and you can't find it in an autofocus version, but other than that, I would not. It's a matter of taste.
All right, good. Moving on, Audio-Technica is entering the on-camera shotgun microphone field. They have the beautiful names ATV SG1 and ATV SG1LE. I wish manufacturers would just call things differently, but
we always touch this. Let's see when we come up with our line of products if we're going to be any smarter. But anyway, Audio-Technica is a Japanese company. They are in the market over 60 years, and they're doing a lot of great stuff. This specific type of microphone, I think it's a little celebration for them, because the last time that they introduced something in this range was over 10 years ago. And I have to say that I think they really did their homework. When you look at those microphones, so one of them, the SG1, is the more advanced one, and I will explain in a second what I mean here. And the SG1 LE, this is the simple one. And the simple one is really for content creators who simply want to put a microphone on top of the camera. The nice thing that you can shift the angle of the microphone a bit left, a bit right, 30 degrees to each direction. But I think for me personally, the big story here is the more advanced one. Of course, it's a bit more expensive. This is the SG1. there are some components within this microphone that I think it's really well thought through. One of those is the ability within this microphone to record 2 levels of audio. So you can already tune the microphone to record on one level and then a safety level. This is really great. But on top, which is even more innovative here, is to be able to record the microphone itself, but also connect another external microphone. So let's say that I'm working with a lavalier. I can literally record 2 sources of audio. I can have maybe the Atmo, what we call like the general room tone, in one, and the person who is talking on the other, or just have another safety. Depends on how far you are from your subject, because this is a rather narrow pattern here, like to allow directional recording. So this is something that I really like. You do have the microphone socket here with independent volume. You can also adjust the volume of the recording itself. So in a way, some stuff that we used to do on the camera are being taken out into this microphone. Of course, it's always best to listen when you record on the camera to hear how the final thing sounds like. But in general, I think it's a very independent product. Yeah, that has a lot of the audio things that you need, and also this specific one, the SG1, has a built-in battery, and this battery you can charge with a USB-C. So.
This is okay.
So the quality,
of course, it needs a battery if it records internally.
Exactly, but the quality itself of the microphone, it's the same as the lower end version, and I think you can what makes it also a lower end. You don't have the safety track. You don't have
no internal recording, I guess. Or?
No. There is no internal recording in both. Sorry, maybe I was not clear. There is no internal recording. It's more about when we deal with mirrorless cameras. You normally record one channel of audio, and even if you record separately, sometimes it's hard to adjust. So here,
it's no internal recording.
Exactly. So no internal recording, but you can already pass through the audio in 2 levels into the camera. That's what maybe it's a better description. So the lower version will cost $119. And the better version, or the more professional one, is $249. And I really like what they did here. Very simply put.
Nice. But now it doesn't have internal recording, but so that you mention it, it would actually be nice to have. Imagine, because just as a safety track, because we have it with the lav mics now, with the 32-bit ones, where, whether it's the DJI mics and so on, and Holy Land and so on, they all kind of record the 32-bit locally. And imagine you would just have this as a safety track built into the microphone, maybe with a micro SD card slot, or just with an internal memory?
Absolutely. I think this is something also we're going to meet the people behind Audio-Technica at NAB, and it will be a valid question to ask. And then if it has an internal capacity for recording, then it's absolutely an absolute winner, because of course then you have a safety net, another safety net. We know how important audio is in general, especially that with this type of microphone you can record with another microphone or lavalier in here, like to move the sound from an external microphone to the camera.
And if there was even a way to do a timecode connection, you know what I mean? So it's super easy. You just drop it in and automatically it's on your timeline with the footage that you're shooting, if that's even possible. That would be amazing. Yeah. Okay, cool. Good. Sony finally released, after I think a month delay, because they originally said February, the big update for the FX6 firmware version 6, which introduces the Big 6 interface, the external Blackmagic RAW autofocus improvements, and more. We reported about this from BSC Expo in February, and now it's out, and you can download it and update your camera. I think from the first feedback I'm seeing online, most people were managing to do this without any troubles. There were 1 or 2 that said they bricked their camera, but
really?
But it's nothing, it doesn't seem like a bug. It's more like a user error probably. But it takes up to, Sony says 8 minutes. I saw that some people reported more like 15 minutes. It's always a little bit of a, you get nervous because you see the progress bar,
Heart attack.
and you know what, like it firmware updates are really, it's almost like a heart surgery on a camera. And with some cameras in the past, at least, I was burned before, and I think I talked about it before. It can actually, damage hardware, and I think it's gotten better over the years. Usually, you can flash the hardware, like the firmware, and then start from scratch if there is a problem. But anyway, just be careful when you do that. But yeah, so it's out now, and based on what we've seen, it's working. I think there's already actually a 601 if you download now, so they probably patched something. We haven't reported about that, but I'm sure they're on this with quite a big user base of FX6 users. We also have a bunch of comments here already from people that have been trying it and been more or less successful in performing the update. But again, be careful. And but I think in terms of usability, it's adding quite a few interesting things. And if you're a DaVinci user, you might want to look into the ability to now externally record a Blackmagic RAW natively, which is great. All right, moving on to Nikon issuing technical service advisory for the Z6 Mark III, Z5 II, and Z Arcana. Sounds very cryptic. What does that mean?
Well, it means that obviously Nikon identified an issue with their cameras, and those are 3 leading models. Yeah, the way they're formulating it, according to the company, certain components used during manufacturing did not meet their quality standards and could cause affected cameras to become inoperable. So I think, so I guess there is a lot of cost involved here to Nikon themselves. That's never...
So it's like a recall.
In a way, it's a recall, yeah. And in the article, if you are a user, a proud user of one of those cameras, there is a way to identify if your camera is actually affected, because it's very clear. It's about serial numbers and everything. Everything is well documented here. So just head to the article itself, check your serial number, and then they have an online tool. We have the link in the article itself, and then you can put this number, and then you can literally see if your camera is affected.
We don't really know what the problem is, right? They don't really say.
No. But they're offering free inspection, free replacement, and any faulty part, free shipping to and from Nikon service centers, support regardless to their warranty status. So you can imagine that this is a big thing, because otherwise they wouldn't really offer all of those I don't want to say benefits, but it's of course their responsibility, but it's good to see that you are fully covered.
Okay. Good. Let's see. I mean, if you're affected and you had a faulty camera, we'd be interested to hear about that. So email us at podcast@cined.com or comment below that article. Link is in the show notes, of course.
Yeah. I mean, if you think that your H.265 when you record with the ZR is too soft, that's not the reason to change the camera. That probably will not change. Yeah.
And it didn't get better with the last firmware update. So. Yeah. All right. Good. Anamorphic tool was just launched. What is that, Johnny?
So, you know that I'm a little bit obsessed with Anamorphic. I really like shooting in Anamorphic. I love the unique look of it. A person by the name Bruce, he's an independent developer. He approached us and say, "Hey guys, I have a new tool, check it out." And it's literally a plug-in, or actually it's 2 plug-ins for DaVinci Resolve. It might also work with Premiere, but that's not the aim. As he phrased it, if there will be enough demand, he will also develop a plugin for Premiere. And the idea is to work with 2 kinds of footage after you shoot with your anamorphic lens or not. So that's the thing. So with one, you can apply an anamorphic look. Mm-hmm. You mean the distortion and...
if I haven't shot
if you just shot with a spherical lens, and the other plugin will kind of enhance the anamorphic look, even if you shot with an anamorphic lens. And he actually took the freedom to download, apparently in a very good quality, our GFX Eterna 55 review, and he applied one of those plugins on our video, and you could see the differences. Yeah, I mean, I shot it with the Eterna, GFX Eterna 55 with the an Iron Star from Sirui, the anamorphic lens, the 1.5 anamorphic lens. And obviously, after he applied it, it looks even a bit more cinematic. Yeah? So I think this is something you definitely, if you like anamorphic and you're not 100% satisfied with the look of your footage, maybe this is something for you to concern. Or if you want to give a look of anamorphic to a spherical footage, that's another way to do this. One thing to note, please look at the article. It says exactly what your system should be like what type of specifications it should have, because it will not work on everything. It's quite demanding, apparently, when you're rendering the footage. So, I think this is actually, I just wish, this is just a wishful thinking. Imagine to be able to move this type of innovation to live inside the camera, for example. Just to enhance the anamorphic footage. But who knows, maybe in the future.
Cool. And it's only $20.
That's right.
One-time purchase. That's very affordable.
Yeah. I think you can also download, I have to check, I think there's a free...
Yeah, it says there's a free trial.
Exactly, there's a free trial.
Cool.
And it's for Windows and Mac OS.
Cool. I'll check it out as well. Moving on. Apple announced that they acquired Motion VFX. Now, this is a company that some of you might be familiar with, especially if you've been working with Final Cut. I mean, not only, but they have a bunch of different softwares that actually add a lot of really useful things to Final Cut, but also even DaVinci and Premiere. And this is a company with 70 employees, and actually not so small, and over 15 years of experience. And it's kind of interesting because it means that there's going to be more features in the future, of course. I mean, Apple is never interested in continuing the brands by themselves. They usually do acqui-hires for the developers or integrate. And in this case, I'm sure they will integrate some of the functionality into their creative studio lineup, which is great, of course. I mean, now we've covered the creative studio suite, which is basically now moving into, subscription. You still can right now do a one-time purchase of Final Cut Pro and all the other parts that are contained. However, you can clearly see they want to add more functionality, which is probably only going to be available through the subscription. It's quite a low-priced subscription, but still, so Apple in general, overall strategy is growing their services business. We see on their balance sheet that it's grown to $30 billion lately. So this is a big thing for them. And but basically what Motion VFX brings to the table are things like AI-powered rotoscoping, which of course is already built into Final Cut Pro, surface tracking, which is they have a very good surface tracker for Final Cut Pro. They also have a 3D tracker for automatic camera tracking and 3D object placement, as well as AI-assisted video upscaling tools, which is also interesting. This is something where they've been lacking, of course. We see the integration of Topaz into some of the Adobe software now. So I guess Apple is trying to find an equivalent to have these upscale functions into their software as well. And it's a lot of logical stuff because most of what Motion VFX did is really great on Final Cut, and it's like to integrate those features is going to be quite easy for them, and just makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so a lot of AI stuff, which is machine learning stuff, that Motion VFX has been working on, are some of those additional things that are added to Final Cut Pro. Now, of course, there's a question mark over the competing NLEs, some of which Motion VFX also supported, because there are versions for their plugins for DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro. Not all of them, but some of them. I think, honestly, Apple probably has no interest in continuing them. Also, knowing historically, they tend to kind of discontinue those things when they are available. I mean, they have already acquired app makers in the past that made Android versions of apps that have been discontinued in the future. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be the case. But yeah, I'm excited about the fact that Some of those functions for sure will be added at no extra cost to their creative studio apps in the future. And some of the motion VFX stuff that's out there is extremely useful. So that's I think it's good news for users. All right, YouTube. When you hear YouTube, do you think about
cats or serious videos?
That was 20 years ago. But yeah, so YouTube by revenue, which is of course part of Google, but YouTube revenue alone is now world's largest media company. And the Hollywood Reporter reported that YouTube's $62 billion in ad revenue in 2025 has now surpassed what Disney earns in a year, which was 60.9 billion, which so far, of course, Disney being the largest media company. So while not being a company by itself, because it's owned by Google, it would be the world's largest media company if it was a standalone company. And that's kind of amazing. 40 billion of that came in through advertising, and Q4 alone in 25 contributed 11.4 billion. And the remaining revenue comes from their subscriptions, which is YouTube Premium. I think it's called YouTube TV in the US, I'm not sure. YouTube Music, and then is NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. Actually, it's a different product. But anyway, it's all subscription stuff, and that makes around 22 billion a year already. Now, we have reported before in February that, so far, since they started their creator program, probably, 10 years ago or longer? I forgot. They boasted that they paid out over $100 billion to creators, music companies, and media partners. No, actually, over the last 4 years. So, yeah, it's a lot of money. And I still think, they're so successful because they're quite unique in the amount of money they pay out to creators. I haven't heard from anybody making any significant kind of money from Meta. I also heard that Meta is now paying some of the top creators on YouTube, offering them $3,000 a month just to come back to post stuff on the Meta platforms, which sounds like a very desperate move, in my opinion, because as far as I know, it's nowhere near as what you can earn on YouTube if you're successful in terms of ad revenue. So they're kind of unique in that space. I can't see that change. Hopefully, I would love to have Meta give YouTube some competition in that space. Just imagine they would offer more, a higher percentage share. I think YouTube pays out, if I'm not mistaken, 55% of what they make with ads to creators, and 45% they keep. Imagine Meta would come in and say, we'll pay out more. But let's see. It's a different model, and usually, the problem is that Meta ads are not actually part of the videos you watch. It's kind of like in between the other content.
Not only that, I'll give you an actual, my point of view. Yeah, my kids, the smaller ones, are now 10 and 12. They don't know what is Meta. They don't know what is Facebook, because we are also restricting them to be in those horrible platforms. But on the other hand, they know what is YouTube. They are consuming music videos from that age. So they know what is YouTube. They know what to expect, and I think that's the whole thing in a nutshell. Yeah, that there will be probably customers for the future too, and search and watch what they're looking for at YouTube, and not even on traditional television. But Meta, they might be exposed much, much later. And that's one of the big differences between the platforms.
Yeah, and I think, there's generally, my feeling is that classical social media platforms have almost this cyclical way of dying. You see it with the Facebook platform, which is it's like a graveyard.
Well, it's everything about, it's only on my feed, it's 90% advertisement.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of languages that I have nothing to do with.
It's very different for everybody, but I think
I'm waiting for the day when I one day leave, CineD from whatever reason, just to click delete on Facebook and say goodbye. That's really,
the only way you would still use Facebook is for the groups, I guess. But Instagram, of course, is doing very well for them. Yeah. But again, I think it's all those social media sites over time have a way of becoming irrelevant, because the more pages and influencers, whatever people follow, the less you see them. You know what I mean? Because you follow more and more. And then you get all this algorithmic stuff, which so far, of course, they have been kind of being successful to kind of push audiences toward that. But people are getting annoyed at that. Anyway, different topic. But I agree. I think YouTube is the new TV. And it's the way you actually watch what you want to see. It's kind of like, it's not so much competing with Netflix and the scripted stuff, which is like the highly produced stuff. It's more like, you feel like you're watching exactly what you want to see, your next door neighbor who's presenting something to you or showing you the news you want. You get that from YouTube now. You don't get it from traditional broadcast anymore. And if I want something scripted, I go to Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever. That's the way I feel now, how also the young generation is actually using it. And like you said, I mean, music, if you look at the play numbers of music videos, YouTube doesn't even include them in the top views of the most watched videos, because if they did, the first 500 videos would always just be music videos, because people are just watching them on repeat instead of actually listening to music from a music service. They literally just have the music video running in the background on repeat, which is why it gets millions and billions of views. So that's the crazy thing. And interestingly, saying YouTube is becoming the new TV, the Oscars are moving to YouTube. So from 2029, this was already announced in December, and we just mentioned this because we released this just after the Oscars have been awarded. They will replace ABC, which is the Disney-owned channel, to actually broadcast the Oscars globally. So traditionally, this has been a pain to watch in terms of, like, if you're outside of the US, it's not always so easy to watch the Oscars live. And now I think it's going to be global, and it's going to be probably not behind their paywall. So of course there's going to be ads, but people will watch the Oscars, which is like the pinnacle of the film award, on YouTube, which is also a sign of the times, I think. Anyway, so they're definitely outpacing the competition with their growth and what's happening, and it's hard to be neglecting YouTube these days in terms of like having your content somewhere. All right, finally, we're in the last article. It's a long show, no? It's a long show. Felix is nodding, sweating because he has to edit it. Okay, I keep it short. So basically, there's been this lawsuit of the Department of Justice actually suing Adobe over their practices with subscriptions. We know, a lot of people know that if you're trying to cancel a Adobe subscription early, if you have an annual contract that's paid monthly.
That's what happened to us?
You get to pay, yeah. Well, that's the thing. They try to lure you with an annual contract and then tell you only have to pay this per month. But that also means it's not a monthly contract. So if you cancel the contract early, you have to pay a huge penalty, which can be hundreds of dollars or more. And that's what everybody got annoyed at. So, and what the government actually alleged that Adobe was using fine print and inconspicuous hyperlinks to conceal key subscription terms, which, yeah, it's true. I mean, like, we've all been exposed to that. I think nobody is aware of the fact that a cancellation can cost you $385 if you try to leave in the first month of, like subscribing to Creative Cloud Pro, for example. And
why do I have zero respect for such companies?
Yeah, it's crazy. And now the thing is, the good news is that they have to change the way they're displaying this information. The bad news is that the settlement itself does not eliminate the early termination fees altogether. They are just telling them that you have to word it differently, and then they have to pay a penalty, which of course, I mean, this penalty will go to the government, so none of the users will actually, actually that's not true. I think some of the users actually will get money back, I'm sorry. However, going forward, there's still going to be this practice where you pay a penalty. It's just going to be communicated differently. But I like that this got a lot of traction, and people are annoyed at that, and that's why we reported about this as well. Anyway, let's wrap it up here. It's been a long show. Thank you, Johnny.
What? Yeah,
my voice is back has been back for a few weeks, but now it's gone again. No. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and of course, give us feedback at podcast@cined.com if you have any comments or questions. leave a comment, share this with whoever you like, who you think should actually listen to our podcast. And don't forget to like and subscribe on Apple Podcast, Apple Podcast, and of course also Spotify and wherever you can get your podcast. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.